Sleepwalking is an occurrence familiar to many people and is a phenomenon that occurs quite frequently. It is generally harmless, with each incident occurring independently, but it can be quite dangerous not to wake a sleepwalker. However, for an unlucky few, sleepwalking can be a terrifying disorder. These people are haunted by it every night, fearing what spontaneous acts they might carry out in their sleep. Today, let's delve into 6 disturbing sleepwalking stories. Number 6. Robert LEDRU. In the 19th century, Robert LEDRU from Paris, France, was one of the most distinguished detectives. Although he lived in Paris, his expertise would take him far afield. Parisian authorities has asked him to attend to a rather difficult murder in Le Havre, which was 197 kilometres from Paris. A fellow Parisian called Andrew Monet had been gunned down on a local beach. The police had only 2 leads: a bullet that was used in most guns at the time and a footprint. LEDRU inspected the footprints and found that the perpetrator was missing a big toe on his right foot, the same toe that he himself had missing. LEDRU then remembered that he'd woken up that morning to discover that his socks were drenched. He also realised that the bullet found at the murder scene was the same type of bullet he himself used. LEDRU had come to the shocking conclusion that he had killed Monet during a sleepwalking episode, which he suspected had been triggered by his syphilis. When LEDRU claimed responsibility, French police were sceptical of his theory, so they ran an experiment. They confined him to his cell to observe his behaviour through the night. On the first night, he did indeed sleepwalk. On the second night, they placed a gun next to him in the cell, and during the night, he did in fact shoot at one of the guards. In an amazing turn of events, the authorities chose to absolve LEDRU of his crimes, stating that due to his illness, was not deemed responsible for his actions. Unfortunately, this also brought about the demise of a brilliant detective, as he now posed a threat to society, and was forced to live in exile on a farm in the country. LEDRU lived there alongside guards and nurses for the last 50 years of his life. Number 5. Kenneth Parks. In 1987, Kenneth Parks was a 23-year-old husband and father from Toronto. Kenneth had suffered with severe insomnia as a result of losing his job and had amassed huge gambling debts. Early one morning on May the 23rd, 1987, he woke up, got into his car and travelled 23 kilometres to his in-laws' house. Upon arriving there, he beat his mother-in-law to death with a tire lever, a woman whom he had loved and she had regarded him as a gentle giant. Parks also attacked his father-in-law, who luckily survived the assault. After the attack, he got back into his car and, covered in blood, drove straight to a nearby police station and confessed. Turning himself in, stating to the police, "I think I've just killed 2 people." It seemed to be an open and shut case, and because Parks was a compulsive gambler who had recently embezzled money from his own family, police believed that that was the motive. While in police custody, he was transferred to the hospital, where he underwent surgery to treat injuries on both of his hands. Seeing that Parks was unable to remember anything about the incident, lacked any motive for the crime at all, and he had a recognised history of sleepwalking, his lineup of defence experts, including a neurologist, multiple psychiatrists, a psychologist and a sleep specialist, were able to justify to the court that Kenneth Parks was asleep and unaware while committing the crime, and was therefore not responsible for his actions. He avoided a life sentence and a guilty verdict, and he wasn't sentenced to a psychiatric hospital because he wasn't judged insane. In an amazing twist of fate, he walked out of the courtroom a free man. The case was appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, but the judges there upheld the decision. Number 4. The Teenager. In May of 2009, Rachel Ward, a teenager from Horsham in West Sussex, UK, took a step out of a bedroom window and plunged 25 feet to the ground. She had been sleepwalking. Rachel had gotten up out of bed and put a jumper on before walking out of a first-story bedroom window of a family's 19th century home. She hit the ground feet first on a small patch of grass, narrowly missing her car, and had dug deep into the earth before collapsing. Partly conscious, she screamed for help, where her parents found her. Her mother thought the worst, and seeing her daughter in a trance, tried to wake her up, but could only get her to vaguely respond. They initially carried her back upstairs to bed, where she immediately fell asleep again, but they decided they'd better take her to the hospital. After explaining to the doctors what had happened, and after a series of tests, the doctors were amazed to find that she had broken no bones. It was not until the next day that the 18-year-old student fully regained consciousness with no serious damage to her health. Number 3. The emails. One evening in 2005 at about 12 AM, a 44-year-old woman got up out of bed after sleeping for only 2 hours and went to her computer in the other room. She then logged on to the internet before writing and sending 3 emails. Each of the emails was a random jumble of uppercase and lowercase characters, were poorly formatted and strangely worded. One of the emails read, "Come tomorrow and sort this hellhole out. Dinner and drinks 4 PM. Bring wine and caviar only." One of the other emails simply stated, "What the?" This new kind of sleepwalking has been called Z-mailing. Neurologists who have studied the case have stated that it is quite dissimilar to standard sleepwalking, given the complex and coordinated activities such as typing, writing and navigating the computer that were required to complete the task. What is most remarkable is how she was able to turn on the computer, then log on and remember her password before connecting to the internet. It is suspected that the woman sleepwalking may have been brought on by prescription medication that she'd been taking, although the puzzling phenomenon is still far from being fully understood. She was shocked when she saw these emails, as she did not recall writing them. She did not have any history of night terrors or sleepwalking as a child. Number 2. James Currens. James Currens from Florida had been sleepwalking for many years, but his most frightening experience happened when he was 77. In 1998, while sleepwalking, Curren rose out of bed, grabbed his cane, and then walked out of his front door. He then walked straight into a pond close by. He suddenly awoke with water up to his chest, but could not get out of the pond because he'd become stuck in the mud. You would think that the shock of suddenly waking up in a pond would bring on a heart attack for someone his age, but for James, it got even worse. No sooner had he realised he was not in his bed, but was now stuck in a pond, he was now surrounded by alligators. Using his cane, he thrashed at the alligators to fend them off, whilst at the same time screaming for help. Fortunately for James, a neighbour could hear his screaming and quickly rang the police. When they arrived, they were able to frighten the alligators away by flashing their torchlights, and in doing so were able to rescue James. Considering what he had endured, James Curren had only a few minor abrasions after his ordeal. Number 1. Timothy BRUEGGEMAN. In January 2009, Timothy BRUEGGEMAN, a 51-year-old electrician, sleepwalked and left home in Haywood, Wisconsin. He was wearing nothing but underwear and a fleece shirt, and his body was discovered the next morning around 190 yards from where he'd lived. During the night of the incident, temperatures had reached about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, causing BRUEGGEMAN to die of hypothermia. During the investigation, detectives discovered a container of Ambien next to his bed. Ambien is the most commonly prescribed sleeping medication in the country and has been connected with hundreds of incidents of sleepwalking. Sanofi Aventis, the company which manufactures the drug, asserts that Ambien is safe when used as intended and not taken alongside alcohol or other drugs. Ed Lesniak, a friend of the victim, conceded that his friend suffered from insomnia and occasionally drank while taking the sleeping tablet. This wasn't even Brueggeman's first life-threatening incident while sleepwalking. The previous summer, he had driven his pickup truck into the side of his garage. And after the incident, his mother had urged him to stop using Ambien, but unfortunately Brueggeman did not heed the warning signs and it cost him his life.